bring it on.
My name's Simon Mann, and I'm a battle designer at the Creative Assembly.
All right. First off, you go from the history books to a completely different universe, Warhammer. You'd say it might have more creative freedom there, but is that true?
I think it's almost definitely true. I mean, when you look at history, you're very much kind of locked in by the laws of physics, pretty much, okay? But as soon as you enter a fantasy IP such as Warhammer, and you've got to remember, Warhammer's been around for, over 20 years. It's a very established franchise, and a lot of creativity and ideas have gone into it. And it's just totally let us kind of really let our hair down with the kind of mechanics we do. So, you're going to see magic, you're going to see flying units, you're seeing kind of different races. You've got like vampires, orcs, humans, kind of like, dwarfs as well, like all kind of mixed into this particular world. And we've really been able to kind of bring in new systems and new mechanics to actually kind of show that off.
Do you think Warhammer fans, they'll be critical, obviously, of what's going to happen in Total War, like if their universe is represented well? Do you feel the pressure to deliver on a really good Warhammer product in general?
I think we feel the pressure of delivering a good Warhammer product and a good Total War product at the same time, so it's quite exciting to do that. But I'm really confident, especially kind of like when you look at the game and the kind of visuals that you're seeing there, that Warhammer fans are going to absolutely love it. We've taken the units from the tabletop game and almost directly mapped them into our Total War engine, but we've also now brought them to life. They're moving, they're kinetic. You're actually seeing these dwarfs fighting these greenskins. Like, you're really kind of getting that theme and that feeling, as well as the really kind of beautiful environments that we've been able to do. So, in the demo you played today, you saw the Dwarfen Underway, which is kind of a series of roads kind of leading underground, like ancient dwarf roads from centuries ago. And now you're able to play within them, whereas normally you'd only have a tabletop to try it. But alongside that, we've also got the lore. I mean, all these battles and stories and characters, like Thorgrim Grudgebearer, the leader of the dwarfs. Like, these are all characters from the tabletop role-playing game, from the lore. So, I'm really hoping we get the kind of people who love the units and the models having a really good time, but also the people who really love the lore and the story, because, we've noticed that a lot of people love that side of the Warhammer universe. Maybe they don't play anymore, and are able to actually get the time to play with the miniatures, but absolutely love the themes and the story that kind of goes behind all that.
You think this new turn for the Total War series will bring a lot of new people to the series?
I think, kind of as with any game we release, we're always hoping to bring new people, but I definitely think the marrying of these two franchises is going to bring a lot of kind of new players into the game, and we're really kind of sensitive to that. Like, we're going to put in lots of new kind of mechanics and things to kind of bring you gently, as it were, in. So, like every race within the game of the 4 playable that we've got, like, will have a prelude that they play through. It's kind of our way of kind of hand-holding you through the initial couple of hours of the game, as well as giving you the kind of narrative and the context of the kind of situation that you've been put in. And this is all within the kind of sandbox Total War campaign that you'd be expecting.
Yeah. Because Total War is obviously a pretty complex game to just jump into. How does it at all translate from this tabletop? Are there elements from the tabletop game like strategically implemented into this Total War game?
And so, I think we've taken lots of little bits. Like, we're very much kind of Total War first, as it were. So we're not trying to directly map the tabletop game into our engine. What we're doing is we've taken Total War and what Total War represents as a game and really kind of put the Warhammer twist on the whole thing. So, you'll see mechanics that are present in the tabletop game. For example, like the dwarfs are able to kind of do lots of things with grudges and stuff, which is kind of the lore-based mechanics. So they have the Book of Grudges, which they must complete and fill in. So every time somebody wrongs them, for example, if somebody insults their beard or something like that, like they put it in the grudges. They got this is their bucket list of things they've got to deal with. Bring that in. So that's the lore coming in. But then you've got mechanics such as the war. So, in the tabletop game, greenskins are able to trigger wars, and we've brought that into our campaign game. But once again, we've kind of moved it because it's still Total War. We've kind of taken our spin on it, but tried to really keep the kind of like the feeling and the idea behind that mechanic.
So it's more a Total War game than a Warhammer game, pretty much.
I think it's a bit of both. Like, I think mechanically it will be very familiar to Total War players, and you'll see a lot of things that you would understand and expect, but we've really tried as much as possible to bring any Warhammer mechanics that we've kind of taken with us and just try and realise them within the game, as it were. So, we've brought in things like the gyrocopters, like the flying units, and they're able to drop bombs and things. You've got Thorgrim Grudgebearer on his throne of power, and he's able to kind of use his abilities in battle, and they're all things that people will be familiar with from the tabletop game, but as you say, like very much kind of a Total War take on these.
What's the biggest like technical challenge of this new direction for the Total War series?
We've had loads. I mean, like as I say, like flying units. Definitely, I've always said are one of the kind of most difficult things we've had to do because traditionally we're very much land-based, right? All your units are on the ground. You can be used to that. But now we've got units which are kind of 30 meters up in the air, and you've got to kind of deal with how they fit into the game. You know, like
Balance-wise, or
but mechanics-wise, mainly. I mean, like how do two flying units fight one another? For example, how does a flying unit fight something on the ground? How does something on the ground fight a unit in the air? You know, there's a kind of whole relationship there you've suddenly got to deal with, which we've not had to before. And we've also had to kind of, the AI's got to learn to use these really powerful new units to kind of achieve it. You know, they're very good at not getting bogged down. Traditionally, you would build a line of units to kind of stop the enemy advancing on you. But with a flying unit, you can just fly straight over that. Yeah. So, you know, as you saw in the demo today, because you had those gyrocopters, you know, if you use them correctly, you're actually very powerful on the battlefield. You could pick and choose your targets from the Greenskin army and pick what to take down.
and does like implementing these new units and everything and mechanics, does it mean rethinking existing strategy patterns in Total War, or does it mean like completely introducing new stuff? Or like, for instance, will we see conventional units like renamed and a little bit revamped, or are these completely new things, like except for the gyrocopter, of course?
So I think we're adding kind of new things to our bow. So you're still going to get traditional unit makeups, right? So you've got cavalry, infantry, spear infantry, missile infantry, etc. Like going on at the same time. So you've got all these traditional unit types, which, you know, I think a lot of players understand. Anyone who's into strategy games knows those unit styles. But we've brought in new things, like, for example, flying units, as I've already said. But then you've got magic users, casters, right? Now they're a whole new style of unit. Like, they're not someone you send into melee to fight. They're more like a support unit. They can cast these spells which are able to buff your army or even directly damage your opponents, as you probably saw with the Curse of the Bad Moon, which the Greenskin Shaman's quite happy to cast on your most vulnerable units. Yeah. Like, you know, that's a whole, I think they're a separate element, but you've got to be aware of it. Like, you know, for example, a large damage spell like that one, it means that you can't put all your units in one big clump, right? You've got to kind of break up a little bit. You've got to be ready and know what your enemy's going to send against you and be prepared to deal with that. But you can deal with that using traditional army makeups. So you could just have a line of infantry with ranged units behind, very much like the dwarves exhibited there. Like, you know, their infantry is there to protect their ranged units.
And like you mentioned magic, which is obviously new in Total War. How will it be implemented? Like, how will it work? Do these magic units with magical abilities have to like this reload time, or do they have to gather magical energy, or how does it work?
So this is one of those things where we've kind of tried to take a lot of the Warhammer tabletop game, or like kind of the theme of the Warhammer tabletop game. So basically you've got this thing called the Winds of Magic. Now in the Warhammer world, the Winds of Magic are blowing throughout the world, and basically it defines how much kind of magic power is in the air in your local kind of area, right? And depending where you are in the world, that would change. So basically every army on the battlefield has Winds of Magic, right? So it's kind of like, imagine it as a mana pool that you've got. So it starts off at a certain level and will increase over time and fill up. So, and different spells cost different amounts of mana to cost, right? So a powerful spell that's damaging, like Curse of the Bad Moon or Foot of Gork, for example, are really expensive spells, right? You've got to wait for a while. You can't just cast them at the start of a battle. You've got to let your Winds of Magic kind of build up to that phase before you can cast it. But then the more you cast, you're removing magic from your Winds of Magic, and then the more spells you cast consistently, the slower your Winds of Magic refills. So if you start spamming more and more spells, it becomes harder and harder for you to cast more spells. You become more limited in your spell choices.
Will there be sieges in the game?
Yes, so we're going to have a full campaign game as you'd expect from any Total War game. We'll be talking more about sieges in the future, but yeah, sieges are definitely still present.
Right. And allegiances between factions are pretty set in stone in the Warhammer universe. What role will diplomacy play in this game?
So, like, as you've already said, like, you know, there are some pretty preset diplomatic stances, basically, between each race. So, you know, like the Empire and the Dwarfs, very much old allies. They've been allies for kind of hundreds of years. You know, Blackfire Pass, originally, the Dwarfs came and helped. So, you know, like, they've had that. So the Greenskins and the Dwarfs absolutely detest each other. As I was saying before, there's definitely a couple of Greenskin entries in the Book of Grudges, right? Like, But then also you've got the vampire counts. The vampire counts want to take over the empire, and kind of all these 4 races are really interconnected, and kind of, they're really kind of battling one another in this situation, but you're going to always be able to do diplomacy. It's, we are a sandbox game, so you're going to, as the greenskins, you could probably broker a peace with the dwarfs if you want to.
It is possible.
It is possible.
It's hard, but possible.
It'll be difficult, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're going to have a certain amount of hatred. Like, they've hated each other for so long. Like, that's always, whatever diplomacy you do, that's always going to be pulling back anything. So you may be able to broker a peace, but how long will it last, right? Eventually the old cracks, as it were, are going to reform, and you will be back at war again. But if you want to put in quite the amount of effort that's required to do that, and probably the amount of money required to do that as well, like, you are able to achieve that goal, should you wish, or take over the world and attack everyone.
So, are you a big Warhammer fan, like, personally?
I played a lot of Warhammer 40k, like, certainly, and then played some Warhammer as well. I play Vampire Counts, which are like my favourite army, but definitely appreciating it a lot more. I mean, I kind of stopped when I was kind of about 16, and then sort of picked it up again for working on Warhammer, and I kind of realised how much I quite like the lore side of it very much.
So what role will chaos play, if any?
You'll have to watch this space, I'm afraid. I'll say no more. But we've got loads more to announce as well, because we've got the vampire counts as well, which we've not shown off anything yet. So you'll have to watch this space. We're doing lots of kind of little reveals as we go through.
Okay, great. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you.
And yet all this is nothing before what is to come. It whispers and roars in. The dark it is. Against us it is unstoppable. I am unstoppable. I see it now. The beasts that will devour